Hi, good morning, everybody. Is it okay with the headphones? Yeah, nobody's having an issue with them. You have been practicing a while, I think, this morning, so that should be fine. My name is Danny, by the way. I'm sitting here with Fredo. Hi, good morning, Fredo.
Yeah, good morning. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. I think we have to be a little bit nice and create some value this morning,
Yes.
right?
That's why I asked, how are you? Yeah.
How I'm doing fine. I'll give you the segue with the first 30 minutes and then you take over from me, Fredo,
Yes.
If that's okay.
Yeah.
If there are any questions, we would like to have them posed at the end of our session. That's maybe a bit time-wise, for the timekeeping, that's a bit more, I think, more appropriate to do so. Fredo, you are a professor at University of Utrecht.
Yeah.
I'm basically coming from industry, and in the past 25 years, I have been basically trying to assess how to create maximum value by innovation, working together with Fortune 100 companies, early stage startups and everything in between, and also with pioneering governments, basically, both on a European level as on local municipalities that want to basically outstand in terms of innovation. I've been doing, I think, about 30 pre-commercial procurement trajectories, and today I will share a little bit my insights with a view of an industry perspective on how that works and not. And in that sense, procuring innovation is basically not new. Governments have been stimulating innovation for decades, basically. If we look at the Delta Works in Holland, if we look at the Kennedy Tunnel, and those familiar with Antwerp, I know mobility is not that good anymore at the present days. But obviously after 50 years and doing nothing in terms to innovate, you have to adapt afterwards. There are a lot of examples like European Space Agency that is launching a constellation of the Galileo satellites to have more precise navigation data, and it outperforms basically the US equivalent, so we can be quite proud on that. But also the iPhone, I think one of the most popular consumer products from the past decades. I think 13 of its technologies have been supported by SBIRS, and Apple just put together a brilliant packaging. And what all these initiatives have in common, that they spurred technological advancement and they create a lot of value for people. And because they create a lot of value for many people, they also create value for society. And when you are trying to look for value, then basically one activity is particularly interesting, and that's the activity to discover needs, an unmet need. And we did multiple surveys within a public context, asking public authorities, how good are you in discovering those new needs? And the majority basically told us that, yeah, it was very important, but they were not satisfied with their expertise or ability to do so. And in many occasions they say, you know what, Danny, industry will solve this problem, or the market, which is a broader term to say that also knowledge institutes are part of the market. So we asked the same question to the market players. How well are you doing in discovering unmet needs and try to understand the value of them? And 75% is also dissatisfied with their ability to do so. So I think we can say that on a crucial aspect, we need to improve one way or another, and we need to do our homework in order to become better. So what is the concept of value and needs? Well, any kind of product or system or service or process that you reinvent or invent, it has different kinds of needs, different kinds of jobs, as we call it in the professional industry. And those jobs can be functional, they can be personal, they can be social, they can be adjacent to it. And obviously we need to discover what is really interesting and to what kind of functionalities should our new system comply with. And obviously if we do a pretty good job in that, then we gather a lot of wanted effects, because any system exists out of as much as wanted effects as we can think of. Features that we appreciate, things that it delivers that we value basically to use it. Unfortunately, for every value we create, it might be that we also create an unwanted effect. From a procurement perspective, the cost price of an innovation is often not that wanted. And if it's all good, then we basically create an unbalance. So we have more wanted effects than we have unwanted effects, and then that type of new system is probably going to be a success in the market. And we developed a simple rule of thumb to measure it, basically. There are only 5 criteria where an innovation should comply with. And that's basically the first question you have to ask yourself is it useful? Does it make sense? Huh? Does it solve a real problem or not? Huh? And if not, then it's probably not worth it. A second criteria we try to assess is it feasible? And that can be from a technical viewpoint, does it work, or from an economic viewpoint, is it viable? Is it feasible to overcome one way or another? A third one is about the desirability. Are people willing to use this? Regardless of the fact that it might be useful, regardless of the fact that it works, it's not necessarily the case that people like to adopt it, right? Our fourth one, is it usable? So is it user-friendly? Don't we put in all kinds of hinders that basically press me to take a training before I can start using it, and if I need to take a training, then probably I'm not having the motivation to do it, and then basically my desire is gone. And last but not least, is it allowed? Huh? We cannot do anything that is not allowed. And despite the fact that these 5 criteria are quite easy and simple, like I tell them, we see a lot of failures, and that's what we see also in a public context. We see a lot of pilots that have been set up, and we can ask ourselves what is now a very important reason for failure. I think in the late 70s, in the early 80s, we were making the transition from a cash economy. My parents, I was still playing Lego at that time, so that was not me, but my parents were paid in cash on a weekly basis, and they didn't have a bank account. The company Verhaar was busy with transition towards electronic payment economy with the leading integrators that originate in Belgium, basically, Mr. Cash and Bank Contact. And we were looking at that point how to introduce that technology and transform rapidly, because what was the trigger that people went to a bank, opened an account and asked for a debit card to pay, something which is today very normal. My children, they don't even know cash money anymore, in an abstract way. They are surprised that we still pay cash. But in the late 70s, that was the normal thing to do. And we found out that basically people were having the least rejection to change their habits by basically being able to fuel up their car. Because if you're paid on Friday evening at 5 and your car was not full of gas, you couldn't do anything that weekend because gas stations were closed, because personnel was not working in the weekends. If we ask people how well are you able to measure rejection, then basically the majority says we have insufficient knowledge to understand the motivations why people reject an innovation. Huh? So I think we all have a bit of a challenge to make it work. And what we also see often is, both from industry and from public authorities, that we lack cooperation, because we set up a lot of pilots, and this is just an example of a hospitality robot to be tested out in a municipality to understand how it works, how it guides people from one place to another. But in essence, what we see is, likewise we see in startups, the number of failures of pilots is very high. And we should work on that. To give you a little bit of idea, I think in Holland there has been an extensive amount of research done, and the numbers over the years don't change. You need about 1,000 startups to have one unicorn, like one new Facebook or Google, to put it in that way. We do a lot of pilots, but I think a lot of pilots starts with an intention and not with basically the commitment to procure in the end of the day. And we should all be very aware that from an industry perspective, this sounds like a waste of capital, because why would you invest in a scenario when your lead user is not willing to buy, not willing to invest in such a system? So I think we need to find the balance between setting up pilots and having money available to commercially procure, because if we want to keep on collaborating in the long run, then we need to establish a sustainable relationship which is built on trust, basically. And I think that's hugely important in order to make it a success and to engage these industrials. I have about 3 wonderments being active in more than 15 years in this practice, and I'm not sure whether I have the solutions, Fredo, so I'm just putting it as a kind of I'm looking at it like my children looked at the world when they were very young, and they would still be surprised and like wondered why it is like that. Eh? And they asked the question 100 times why, until the moment that I got a little bit unnerved with it, because I didn't have any answer to the why anymore. But the answer that came on that moment, that was the real answer that they were looking for, I suppose. So I think we need to look a little bit like what is happening in that context. Eh? And I think we can all be nice, but I think it's more even important that we do good to create value. Huh? And then we can still be nice, obviously, towards each other. Don't know what you think about that, Peter.
I guess being nice is a precondition, but let's discuss that afterwards.
Yes, that's a good one. So 3 wonderments, maybe how to change and how to do it differently. My first one is that, what are we procuring? Have we really thought about that question thoroughly? Are we procuring a solution, an innovative solution, or are we procuring something else? And I think it's from my opinion, a kind of valid question. In a sense that I often have the feeling that people look at the ultimate goal, like the end result, the outcome, what you would like to procure. But in essence, if we all agree that innovation is a process where we try to implement something new, so we need to discover a little bit what that new is all about. We need to discover the technical requirements that are feasible and possible and desirable and that make sense to have. Yeah, then we step into a process, basically, a process where we try to figure out what we need together with the market, and it takes a little bit courage, because we are used as procurement agencies and professional procurers to have technical specifications set up and to have them basically really balanced, because we know what we want. And we are seeking for best value for money. And now suddenly we don't know what the value is anymore, so we cannot understand what the best money is for that best value that corresponds. So we need to have a kind of way, and we often try to procure a solution under the guise of a service, basically, and that's a process, and that process is not that abstract, if you ask me. It's a very concrete process. It starts with your policy, and to understand where do we need to innovate, and then basically to start researching what is my real problem that I need to solve, what is my unmet need, and what's the job to be done. And then understanding where the innovation opportunities lies. Is it in the operating model, in the business model of your public authority? Is it in the technology? Is it in the way that we use or behave or act upon? And should we modify that? And what's the level of innovation that we are seeking for? And I think that's something that you have to do within a kind of, as a public authority, for yourself. You have to understand what kind of value that you're trying to create and what kind of problem that you're trying to solve in order to have the market allowed to understand how to design a solution for that and how to de-risk and test that solution in a laboratory environment to take away some of the major technical risks, but also in a field environment to take all the boundary conditions of real life into context and bring context into play before we can freeze our technical specifications and have a commercial tender released. And I think in all these phases there is one single message that I want to give. It's not only concrete, but those phases are equally important. We cannot run from A to solution design without thinking thoroughly on what we need. That would be a big mistake if we don't know what problem we have to solve and what is a valuable problem to solve, and then start investing in a pilot. Because then we end up with those 999 ideas that don't make it to the market. And I think we should have a common sense and a common agreement that we are looking for that single blockbuster to make a better world together in public. In that sense, this is a process that you also can manage. This is an example from our public transport company, The Lijn. And they are preparing a pre-commercial procurement trajectory today, this year, in order to resolve the problem of bikes that getting stuck in the rails of a tramway in a city center. And it's not a problem that we face only in the cities of Flanders or Belgium. This is a pan-European problem. And if you look back on the trajectory that this organization went, basically we are looking at for more than 10 years. We have been testing out different technical solutions. We even have been testing what kind of effect could it be in prevention when we would fill up the rails one way or another. Would that really help? And during those 10 years we gathered a lot of knowledge. We have been mobilizing a lot of people. We have been studying a lot of things. But in the end of the day, we come to the conclusion that there is no solution in the market that fits the needs. So we have to basically now start at the first step. what kind of solution are we seeking, for what kind of use cases, and what are the requirements for the solution that we need. And I think if we manage that process more diligently, and we manage it more as a process rather than an experimental setup where we go from one learning to another, we can save time and quite some money. So that was my first wonderment. I think a second wonderment I have is sometimes I have the feeling that if we start with an innovation trajectory, we are under a lot of time pressure. It's like it needs to be done yesterday. And I'm thinking, why? I mean, if I'm in corporate world and I see somebody talking about a breakthrough innovation, or in startup landscape, and they are talking about disruptive innovation, in my opinion, you can only be too soon on the market, not too late. Because probably the market is not ready for it. Don't know if you hear the plane, but I can. I was not ready for this. So why is that? Is that because we only have a kind of short-term focus, or we forget to look about the future inevitable cost? Because that inevitable cost in the future is there. I think from a procurement perspective, we call it our procurement calendar. And we all know what costs are coming ahead in the next few years, especially if we talk about public infrastructure, etc. And I think that calendar is quite a good guidance for us to start planning ahead, because we know we need time to explore, we know we need time to assess what works, what doesn't work, but we hardly connect our innovation projects to such a calendar and start to plan in advance. And in that sense, we lack the time to explore and to test what we really need, to validate what really works, and to understand how to make this transition, basically. And in that sense, that calendar is also quite an interesting thing to understand how much innovation you can afford. In a sense that if you want to go really high level of innovation, then you have to start in time. If you want a low set of innovation level, you can wait until basically your procurement is coming nearby. And from the other perspective, from the other angle, I just wonder how many idea owners couple their idea to such a purchase calendar, and how many innovation procurement officers basically use the procurement calendar as a tool to instigate and to trigger whether an innovation project makes sense, for instance, to save money. And I do understand that if you want to save money within 5 years, that there is a little thingy in transferring budgets that normally is going to spend within 5 years to early stage. But I think that's something we should all start to think about, how to earmark and to understand how we can save our costs. Because in all the workshops I've been attending over here, in the medical, it was about we cannot pay for the healthcare system anymore. So we need to understand how to save that money. And those costs are coming up inevitably. We have to change our scan systems once in the next years, one day or another. And we know that, so we can plan ahead for it. That calendar is pivotal in a sense that if you do it right and well, then it can be really instrumental also to make your promise and intention true, to come true in a kind of commercial procurement. For instance, with the department, the Flemish department where we work on the roads and mobility, from their procurement calendar, they had a re-letting program organized. And I'm not sure whether you understand our Belgian situation, but if you fly over Europe at night and you see a dot and lighted, that's Belgium, basically. We have 1.2 million lights across our highways, and every municipality has a street light, which functions at night. No doubt about it. And in the re-letting, there was an opportunity to have smart dynamic lighting integrated, which was great, basically, because LEDs have the biggest advantage to gas lamps, that you can put them on and off, you can turn them on and off without any heating time. So you can be very smart in saving energy and securing basically safety on the roads. And we had 1 million of sensors across our highways. We can measure surface temperature, we can measure the water level on the road surface. We can measure the intensity of traffic. We can measure what type of car is on the road. So there was a huge opportunity to make those lights much more smarter. And basically we asked ourselves two questions. The first question we asked was, what is the impact on the requirements for the future tender of the reletting program? So what needs to be minimally in that tender in order to allow that we have smart dynamic lighting, and what could be maximum in the tender to make sure that this solution becomes part of the first procurement schemes. The second question we asked was, okay, we seem to have a light vision, and the light vision over here is known, it's not a law, but let's say it's a norm or a standard. And if you don't comply with it, then basically there is no guarantee that you comply with the safety regulations set forward in that light vision. Now, that light vision was not saying that you could switch off lights and on at night in any occasion. They simply said you need to put the light on when necessary, which means the safest way is at all times. And we want to have dynamic lighting. So what should we do in our pre-commercial procurement trajectory and the preparation of that in order to have that light vision changed? Because if that was not changed, then we could not implement it. So we had a first exploration trajectory, different use cases, different technologies researched. We have piloted cases, and after 2 years we had basically reached a common ground on how the light vision could be changed based on the results we had, and basically this entire program was scheduled into that procurement calendar. So it does make sense to connect things one way or another, and to build basically an innovation and to implement an innovation. My last wonderment is all about, sometimes I'm a bit concerned, and I know that the legal aspect of procurement, being in there for 15 years and having an economic training, being active in high-tech and deep-tech sectors for more than 25 years, I do know that legal aspects are probably very important. So I'm not disguising that. But being a person that is looking at value, value creation, I wonder why we have so many conversations on the legal aspects and on the placement procedure, and so few conversations on how to secure that quality of the outcome while doing a pilot in our pre-commercial procurement trajectory. And that's a bit funny to me, because if I look at a commercial procurement procedure, I would say that procurement officers are doing the maximum to secure the outcome. Like, you have to be very creative as a company to meander and basically propose something that is not meeting those criteria. And innovation, it seems that we are very satisfactory if the market does something, and we'll see what comes out. Often I hear, but we cannot hinder or limit or reduce the space for creativity. But to me, quality assurance is very different than limiting creativity. I mean, that has nothing to do. I think we are not in a world of artists. We need to deliver value. So we need to control one way or another what is being done in those phases, that we spend the public money in a good way, and that we also have a reason to believe that investing in it makes sense. So in that sense, and I understand that that process of procuring research, development and innovation processes might be new to you, and you're not familiar with it as a procurement organization, but I think it's hyper important. It's really super important that you start thinking on how to sustain that quality, because the market will not solve that for you. In that sense, that trust is a little bit over-exaggerated. You should agree on the level of quality assurance with the market that you're willing to adopt and you're willing to pay for, and the level of de-risking that you're willing to do for. And to put it in very simple terms, there are only two levels of risks that you should control. The first level of risk has to do with the quality of the outcome, the value basically. And that's all about simulation, verification and validation. And books are written over that, courses are given on that, theses are brought upon that. Quite complex, but in essence it's very simple. The more you test, the more you validate, the more you de-risk. And the second thing you need to manage and assure the quality on is on the execution performance. And that's all about managing the time, the money and the performance. And the awkward thing is that all three are interrelated. You change one and the other two change as well. You can speed up but probably it's going to cost you more. Not sure what happens with the performance. You can lower down the performance, spend a bit money, maybe win some time. In all kinds of combinations, they are interrelated. And I think it makes sense if we set a pilot up front that we specify what we would like to have from a de-risking perspective, so that we have basically comparable solutions that we can choose of as a procurement organization. Maybe two pilots to round up this session. The first one is, I'm not sure whether people are familiar with the 1700 line over here. 1700 line is a call center for the Flemish government, and any citizen or everybody present over here can now dial 1700 with any question which is under the responsibility of the Flemish government. That call center gets 1 million calls a year. It sends out 10,000 of messages, and the operators, they have a pretty busy job with classifying the question and searching for the information. So how could artificial intelligence support them, basically? Huh? How could it make their life easy? So we have been researching quite some use cases, and basically from the whole research that we've done and the consultations that we set up, we basically said there are two key risks over here. That's, first of all, is there a feasible language model which is able to capture the question from speech to text, right? And the problem is we all speak Dutch over here and Flemish, and it's a rich language, and we have different dialects, and we wanted to have an inclusive system, and obviously we are not a world language yet, or not at all. So most language models are not boiled down to the Dutch language. So would it work? Technically, would they understand all kinds of dialects? The second question we ask, are they usable? Like, is the response time fine? That we don't have to wait for 20 minutes in order to get a guided response on the search, and then see that basically the operator left the room, or whatever. So we started to implement that, and then we did a measurement. Is it useful, feasible, and all the other criteria? And suddenly one popped up that we didn't saw coming. Basically, people told us, yeah, it's all working fine, but yeah, there is something in talking to an engine that doesn't feel very right. So the desirability was not calibrated well. While if we had our risk assessment done, we were thinking first it needs to work technically, because otherwise this thing is going to fail. And it at the end of the day, the major risk was basically in the desirability and not in the technical assessment. So sometimes you need some iterations. Maybe another example, Frido, is anybody familiar with these bags? Yeah, I can see you nodding. These are what I call our famous blue bags, and basically we return our bottles, PET bottles and alu cans, on a weekly basis by these bags. And that keeps our streets clean, our houses clean, and we are used to do it for more than 10 years. And we do it fine. Now, in Flanders, they want to have a digital deposit system by 25. So that's next year. A digital deposit system that we basically get money back for returning our bottles in order to prevent littering. But we are used to use these bags. And what they use abroad, among others in Utrecht and Amsterdam, you have collector machines, right? Mm-hmm. Collector machines, they are in retail points. So basically you have to put your alu cans to the, in your case, supermarket, Albert Heijn, whatever. Yep. To the supermarket. That's not probably going to work in Belgium by training every Belgian citizen to sort in a blue bag. And now we have to port it. The advantage of that system is, I think, that there is a kind of, there is a lot of littering in the cities. That's what we understood, because basically a lot of homeless people are basically deriving the bottles from tourists that never go back to return their bottle. They just dump it on the street bins. And they are causing quite some hassle and quite some costs to be, and I see people nodding, so they are aware of the problem. And it's very costly, expensive, obviously, to clean the streets afterwards. So we want to do it smarter. And our idea is basically that we use these cans together with those blue bags and do a transition, so we don't ask you to change, because in the beginning of my presentation, I said, if you have to adopt your way of working, then you probably have a high rate of rejection. So how can we lower that? So we set up quite some pilots in order to make sure that key question one is answered, do we lack an incentive? Like, because we can introduce complexity, whether we want it or not. Today it's analog, we have no scan. If we ask people to scan, it's an additional thing to do. And the second thing is it's inclusive, because obviously everybody must be able to use it. So we set up pilots with blind people, with people that are disabled in various contexts to understand. And you know what? We learned a lot. There are some use cases where you can crack the system. So the feasibility is not yet there, but we know what to fix. The desirability, yes, above average, acceptable. Obviously, people would prefer not to change anything, but if you see the alternative, then they are happy with this. The only thing that withdraws us, is it allowed? So to conclude, being nice and doing good, it's about determining the good enough, to have an equally shared responsibility and to treat it as a process, to make sure that you risk it properly, to make sure that you come up and live up to expectations that you procure in the end of the day. And your strategic procurement calendar is basically quite pivotal in that freedom. What do you think about such a conclusion?
I think it's a great conclusion. Yeah.
Shall I
Let's see if we can add something to that.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm sure you can.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much. Great. It's working. So you already discussed, I think, that it's a precondition to be friendly as a procurer to companies if you want to procure something innovation related. So that's what my talk will be about. In the end, to realize good things for society. So my name is Schotanus. I'm a professor of public procurement at Utrecht University. I'm also the co-founder of USEP, that's the Utrecht University Center for Public Procurement. It's a group of currently about 25 researchers. If you're interested in what we do, you can follow us on LinkedIn or look at our website. I do that for 2 days in a week, and the other days in the week I work as a consultant for significant synergy. So I also have practical experience. So in my talk I also talk about theory and practice. And there are 3 things I want to discuss with you. The first one is that I think that governments and PPI, Public Procurement of Innovation, that's a match. That's something, at least in theory, could work very well. However, in practice, we are not that friendly to companies quite often. And I'll explain later what I mean with that. And I will close the session with what could be changed then to make this potential match, to make it work. So first, why is it such a nice match, governments and innovation? Because maybe if you talk to people on the streets, they will not associate innovation that easily with governments, right? But why is it a potential match? Well, first of all, public procurement involves a lot of money. A lot of money. So EU-wide, governments, public organizations, they spend between 2 trillion and 2.5 trillion a year in euros. So we have a lot of money. And most people think that we need to spend this money according to the EU Public Procurement Directives. However, most of the money is spent below the threshold. So 80%, we don't know this for sure, but about 80% is spent below the European thresholds for public procurement. So we have quite some flexibility in how to spend this money. Now, the second reason is that I think we must procure more innovations. We have the SDG goals, we need to be more social, climate friendly, we need to become circular, and I think very much related to that, we need to reduce our dependency as European Union on countries such as China and the United States and several others. And to reduce this dependency, we also need innovation. So we have a lot of money and we need it. Furthermore, many of the things that we buy as governments, we need it anyhow. So we need new buildings, we need energy. So we're already spending lots of money on the things that we need. And sometimes it costs a little bit more if you buy something innovation related. Well, relatively compared to what you're already spending, it's not that much. So that's the third reason. The fourth, this is also quite theoretical. Governments can bear risks quite well. Especially in the Netherlands, our governments pay little interest, for instance, for the loans that they take. They are there probably for the next 10, 20, 30 years, at least I hope. The same for the European Union. It can also be a very safe place to develop a new technology, a new innovation. Furthermore, it's probably also much more effective than subsidies. So we can subsidize companies to innovate. Several studies show that this is not that effective. So if we maybe steer that money more towards public procurement, we can maybe do more with that money. And last but not least, I think if you do more innovation procurement, that our profession will be much more interesting. If I listen to your story, it's much more interesting than listening to talks about how to do a certain tender procedure. So that's interesting, right? So that makes people interested in procurement, because if I talk to my students the first time about public procurement, they're not that much interested, in all honesty. They're interested in marketing or in finance, but usually not in procurement. So if we talk about sustainability, if we talk about innovation, okay, then I have more attention. So we can get more people, more different people to our profession, which I think is very important. So many reasons why it's important to procure innovation friendly. However, we don't do that a lot. So in the Netherlands, that's where I'm from, each year, together with Piano, that's our competence center for public procurement, and TenderNet, that's our national procurement platform. Together with them, also at the university, we analyze all the Dutch national and European tenders and analyze to what extent do we see that they're innovation friendly. So do they use procedures that support, that stimulate innovation, such as an innovation partnership? Do they use certain words, such as launching customer, pre-commercial procurement, SBIR, as you already stated? So we apply that to 8,000 tenders a year. That's 100 billion euros, a lot of money, lots of tenders. And we give them quite a lot of points. So if you only do one innovation partnership in a year, you already get 100 points. So what do you think? How much points do you need to be in the top 10?
A couple of thousand.
A couple of thousand. Yeah. If you want to be in the top 10, 200 points. So you have to do 3 design contests and you're there. Then in the top 10 of the Netherlands. And the top player who scores most points, 600 points. A little bit more. So that's not really impressive, right? No. So you can debate a little bit the method that we use. So we're not catching all of the innovation. I'll leave that out for today. But the interesting thing is we apply this method each year the same way. And each year we see that the scores are decreasing. So that's not a good sign. So on the one hand, we spend more, we do more tenders, and relatively and absolutely, we buy less innovation friendly. So that's the Netherlands. So what happens in countries outside of the European Union? If you look in South Korea, 5% of their public procurement volume is directed to R&D. 20% to the deployment of innovations. Wow, that's a lot of money. If you would spend that much money on innovation in the European Union, that would make a difference. If you look at the States, so you already mentioned SBIR, so small business innovation research, so really relatively assignments, procurements aimed at smaller companies, innovative companies, startups. That used to be Apple, for instance, that they profited a lot from this. They do that quite a lot in the States. So it's about 685 times more often than in the Netherlands. Now, of course, the Netherlands, you already talked about our language. It's not a world language anymore. It's not as big as the States, but at least it's 20 times, the States is 20 times bigger than the Netherlands, not 685 times. And I don't have the numbers on a European level, so I don't know. But the signals I get, it's very similar. Also, if you look at the innovation partnership procedure, so that's a separate procedure in the European directives for public procurement. So each year we do more than 300,000 European tenders in Europe. So what do you think? How many innovation partnerships do we do? We didn't check this beforehand, by the way.
No.
How many?
20%, 30% of
20%, 30%. In total, in absolute numbers, depending on how you measure it, it's between 35 and 39 innovation partnerships all over Europe. That's not a lot, right?
No.
No. No, so that is a separate procedure for that. So many people thought about that. So we don't, apparently the procedure is not working. I think. So we don't buy very innovation friendly. So that's my point here. I hope that's clear. So what's the reason? Why is that the case? So many reasons. If you look in the academic literature, if you look in the professional literature, if you talk to professionals, you see in this list very similar things as you stated before. So one problem is that we do a lot of technical requirements. People outside of procurement are not aware that you can buy innovations with public procurement because they think it's boring, it's a transaction, it's something that you would preferably avoid. That's procurement in many of the eyes of many people. They don't talk to the markets because that's scary. It's a risk for corruption, for instance. So separate rules. Risk-averse behavior, while we can be risk takers. Our procurement processes are very much aligned to buying what we already have. So existing solutions. So all of our routines, our trainings are aimed at the standard and not at buying a little bit different if you buy something innovation friendly. And you need more. You already mentioned knowledge. We need time. You already mentioned that. You need to plan. You need some capacity for that. You need some money. You need to do things with budgets. So there are some challenges. I fully agree with that. So unknown also makes unloved. And of course, we talk a lot about innovation at this conference. We don't always need innovation. So not all procurement has to be innovation friendly, but I think it's more than these 30 innovation partnerships a year. So we can do it much more. And we also seen at this conference many nice best practices. So we see that it's possible to do this. And you already presented some nice best practices. But they're not common. So we need to change these things, I think, from best practice to common practice. And the best practices do show we are able to be friendly, but we don't do it enough. So, what can we change? How can we purchase more innovation friendly? I have many levers that we can pull to be more innovation friendly. And before I show them to you, because it's a lot, I will first categorize, explain my categorization. This is a bit similar terms as you used. So if I look at the procurement process, I talk about the preparation phase, where you discuss with the market, with the internal needs, when you plan, when you develop a strategy. Then there's the actual purchasing. So you do a tender or an SBIR or whatever procedure you're going to use. And there's the performance phase. So that's actual realization. Then you manage the outcome, that you actually get what you wanted. And probably not the same way as you purchased it, but it should do something what we're aiming for. So never ever, after this talk, never ever use the words pre-tender and post-tender anymore. Don't do that. It's not about the tender. The tender is part of it, but it's also about preparing, and it's about the contract realization is probably the most important phase. And we focus a lot also, if you look at the directives, if you look at what we measure on the tender phase, but the other phases are just as important or maybe even more important. So that's why I use different words than in many other publications. Now, this process is influenced by internal factors, organizational related, knowledge, competence, and it's influenced by external factors. You already mentioned legislation, norms. They can really limit innovation. There are cultural, social aspects, and supportive technology or unsupportive technology. They all influence how innovation friendly we procure. Now, I said there are many things that we can do. Many things. So so this is a terrible slide. I have to say that beforehand, but it's just to show you how many levers there are. These are some levers. I'm sure it's not complete, just for the procurement phase. These are some levers for the external factors. And these are some levers for the internal factors. And that's when my slide really ran out of space and I stopped. But if I would want to, and if we would have a debate about this, and with all of you, probably you'll find 50 more examples of levers that we can pull to be more innovation friendly. Now don't worry, I'm not going to discuss all of them with you, but I'm going to do, maybe if you're interested, you can talk about it during lunch, but I'll do something different. I'm going to do a contest, a mini competition. I'm going to pitch 3 ideas to you, and after these 3 pitches, I want to hear from you which pitch is the best, which idea is the best. So after this mini innovation competition, so we're going to practice what we preach, So then I'll ask you to raise your hands if you like the first idea, if you like the second idea, or the third idea. Is everyone okay with that? And there's already a question? Just a minute before you have to turn it on.
Is it on now? Yes. Well, my remark is, why didn't you look after Corona at the first most important thing we needed? That was a follow-up of the European people of their health. I wrote a patent for a health app based on AI in 2018-19, together with IMEC in Leuven. Everybody laughed with us because it was based on AI. Now they consider us a little bit more genius. But my basic question is, why in procurement don't you see the most urgent needs in Europe? Like a health app, which would be immediately needed because the next pandemic is waiting. All the rest is of minor importance. Thank you.
Well, thank you for this question. So I cannot discuss with you the relevance of your app, and I guess you have a personal interest in that as well, but that's fine. But I see the problem that you describe, right? So it's difficult for us in procurement to see, especially needs for the future, things that we don't need right now. How to prepare better for that. And I have some ideas, maybe that will help these ideas getting better platform. So that's what I'm going to pitch about. So I'm going to pitch 3 ideas. The first idea is we need a European Asbury platform. We don't have that right now. The second idea is we can subsidize innovation in the city platforms. And the third idea is we need to procure much friendlier. We need to change how we interact, how we talk to suppliers. So I'll be very short on each idea. And after the session, you can always ask questions if you need. So the first idea. So at this slide, you're looking at the platform that we have in the United States. So that's the Asbury platform. Did anyone ever look at this platform? See some? Good. All right. I think it's a good example in how to announce future needs that you have. So Apple, back in those days, probably didn't have this nice platform. So they used this idea, right? So they used the Asbury's, and they came with solutions that were not, that are new back in the day, and that we are all profiting from right now. So that's the American platform where all of these small assignments for every company who wants to participate, can submit a bid. So that's very different than what you currently do at TED. So the Tender Electronics Daily. That's all of the tenders. It's very formal. It's a maze for many companies. So this is focused on innovation. So my suggestion, mine's the where you now see America's Seed Fund in the upper left-hand side. You just need to change this to Europe's Seed Fund, and we're finished. Just copy-paste, and we need to do some extra things, of course, but this is the technological infrastructure that could facilitate this. So that's the first idea. Clear? Yeah, all right.
Totally clear.
Okay, good. So the next idea, because the first idea I would like that as a researcher. I would like a centralized solution. It would create lots of data. We can do things with that. So I like that as a researcher. But I'm also a citizen of the European Union, and as a citizen, I like my city. I like Utrecht. I actually don't live in Utrecht, but very close to it in a nice village. But I like what happens there. I know the firms, and many people do that. So is it possible that many companies cannot find that, cannot find national platforms, but maybe they can find their cities or their regions? So can we start a little bit like Startup in Residence for those who know it? I also copy-pasted great ideas, I think that are already there, and apply it then, in this case, to cities. So can we create platforms that have challenges, local challenges, for instance, with littering? That's actually a real example. How to solve that? So we create new problems with the things that we do. So how can we solve that problem? So we can create challenges for companies that are also bothered by the litter. And this is a very local platform. The idea is similar, but not European, very local, regional. And the third idea is we need to change how we talk to suppliers. So I'm not sure, did anyone ever read a request for proposal that's published on TED? Does anyone like this text? No, it's very formal, it's legal, it's long. No one likes this, right? And even us. So I guess we are already in a certain bubble, but it's not nice to read. So maybe we can change that. So we have some initiatives in the Netherlands to do European tenders on 3 pages. Or maybe 9 pages, that's what happens in reality, but that's already shorter. And use different language, inclusive language, more diverse, more accessible. And we can use, you already talked about AI, we can use large language models that can help us with that if you apply it in a safe manner. So I won't read the whole slide, but just to give you a bit of an idea. So you start your tender like this. Don't be alarmed. This is a European tender. Please continue reading. So we're not, please. It's different from what we usually do. So we will try to explain as concisely as possible. We won't ask you many questions. And this is what we need. So we have a problem. So we're not going to prescribe with lots of technical requirements what we need. No, a functional need. This is a problem that we have. Can you help us solve it? So talk to the company like it's your equal, right? That's the message here. So 3 ideas. The first one was a European platform for ESPERs. The second idea is the innovation in the city. And the third idea, which I would like as a purchaser and a supplier, is use much more accessible, shorter texts. So who likes the first idea? An ESPER platform on European level. We count 5 hands, 6 hands? Yeah, okay, 6 hands, all right. The second idea. Who likes innovation in the city? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, about 10 hands? Yeah, all right. That's the runner-up then, I guess. Who likes the third idea? Yeah, I think we have a clear winner. And this is not surprising, because I did this contest before. And each time, this contest has one winner. Change our language, make our documents much more accessible. So we can also, I think we can also do the infrastructure, right? An ESPER platform. But the very easy, quick win is to change how we talk to companies, how we interact with them. And maybe also think about other ways than using these formal documents. So, concluding. And then we have some time for questions. So I think that we can be friendlier as governments to markets, as suppliers, companies, and especially don't worry about the big companies. They can find governments, they can find all of the tenders. They have bid management teams and professionals working. That it's increasing exponentially, by the way, in that market. So don't worry about them, but worry more about the companies that don't interact that much with governments, but have potential solutions that can help us, help society. So My message was, I think governments are very well suited to purchase in an innovation-friendly manner. However, as I showed you with some numbers, we are not that friendly yet. And I think we can change that. You can use technology, we can use platforms, but I think we all agreed that the most important thing that we need to do is change how we talk, how we write to companies. So thank you for being friendly. Thank you for your attention. And I'm sure there are questions for Danny and me.
Yes, hello. I'm Kalle Tounen from University of Helsinki. Used to work in municipalities, so city of Helsinki. And actually, in my prime days, I would have been in your top 10 list of cities alone in doing these innovative procurements. So definitely have some experience about that. But my question really is, and maybe it's also a comment a little bit. So when you talk about the governments and their sort of role in innovative procurement, I think you're looking at the wrong level in a sense. And the question really is about what is the motivation of a single person behind the procurement to actually do it in an innovative way. So as you said, most of the procurements are, of course, they are under the threshold, so they are really small in the reward. And oftentimes they are done by a single person. He doesn't get any support, so it's a major task for him.
Yeah.
So the question is that what is my motivation to do it? Because I will not get rewarded for doing it innovatively. The only kind of return you might get is better service, but that's not really for you, it's for the citizens. But yeah, maybe that's my question.
Yeah, it's a good question. Maybe we could reflect both on it. But actually, one of my suggestions in the big list, you didn't see that of course because it had 50 IDs, is that you can actually reward public officers if they do this. So if you talk on the interview that you have somewhere in the year with how do you progress, how are you working, how are you creating value for society, one of the things that you can look at, you also spend a lot of money. To what extent did you do this innovation friendly? And if not, maybe there were good reasons. For sometimes that's the case. And for other times, I think you can reward it if people do this. So that's rewarding. We also need to explain this. And maybe the procurement officer, you in the city, you know about this, but many of your colleagues also do procurements. They don't know about this. So there's also many things to do in showing best practices, showing it's not difficult, and showing what it can bring. You have anything to add to that?
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right. You need a team to do that, because innovation is about multiple disciplines. It's by creating chemistry. And chemistry can be, on the one hand, sometimes annoying because you have to collaborate with different people, different opinions, but you can also create something new by doing that. And I think that's probably a very big incentive, that you can create something new, but you simply cannot do it alone. And there I follow you entirely. I mean, it doesn't make any sense to have procedures which are based on a single person's knowledge, because we are talking about technology and maybe get excited about it. We are getting about how to bring it into an attractive tender and lingo, and how to assess it in a creative manner, which are two different things than the technology. We are talking about the legal aspects and being creative within the legal framework that we have available. So I think the lack of a team is a killing element.
Thank you. Any more questions?
Thank you so much. It is a question related to the last pitching session you have performed. Of course, I was somehow sure that the outcome was going to be that one. But regardless the outcome, the problem is how to change this legal jargon, because in the end you have to work through legal departments, and changing the mindset of legal departments is really a challenge. So, have you got any recipe to this?
That's a very good question. And I don't have the solution for all of these problems. So the same for your question. So we have many challenges in real life, and especially because it's related. So we need to bring other people into this team. So it might help to show the examples, to explain that professors in public procurement think it's a great idea to use different language. And also, try it. Just do it. Do a pilot and see what happens. See if you get all kinds of legal complaints, much more questions during the clarification phases, or not. So that could take away a little bit of these things. Just doing it. That's also what our university does. So they started with purchasing. You can talk about sustainability, but they started with purchasing flowers. So relatively simple procurement. On 9 pages, and then more and more, and people like it. Also people in the legal department. Thank you. Maybe it's time for one final question?
Then I would like to comment also on the latter question. I think in the city of Utrecht, they have spurred innovation, like it's something exciting to do, by getting a lot of people within the municipality thrilled by the fact that they could be creative and they could have some space and freedom to become creative and to construct some teams along projects that were coming up. And then the fun factor is not to be underestimated. To get the job done, and communication, I think, is an essential element in that, Fredo. If that would help you forward a bit.
I think that those are nice final closing words. Thank you, Dani, and thank you so much for your attention.